Hello and welcome to Harvest to You. I'm Pastor Mark, and it is a joy to have you with us today. Listen, before we start the sermon today, I want you to know about harvesttoyou.org. This is a space where you can find additional resources like sermons and devotionals, even a book I recently wrote. It's also a space where you can request prayer. I know that life can be hard, even lonely sometimes, and you just need someone to come alongside you. We would love for harvesttoyou.org to be a spot where you can find equipping, resources, and even prayer for your life.
Well, Thanksgiving is 10 days away. That is cause for celebration here soon. That great American holiday that plays second fiddle only to Christmas is soon approaching. Thanksgiving is a sacred day and honestly a special day. And I am a Christmas guy myself, but I love Thanksgiving. I love the day. I love to eat the food. And it's this day where we get to thank God for all of his blessings. And then we try to eat all of those blessings in one sitting, right? It's a wonderful day for feasting and for celebration. And in the spirit of Thanksgiving, I would like to know what your favorite Thanksgiving dish is. I'm going to count to 3, and you can tell me the dish that if it was not on the table at Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving would not be the same. You can only pick one item, okay? That's the rule. You can't pick more than one. And for all of you who think Thanksgiving is better than Christmas, first of all, you're wrong. But second of all, this is your time to shine, okay? This is your moment to tell us what food you love about Thanksgiving. So on the count of 3, here we go. Let's hear it. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I heard a lot of stuffing. Mashed potatoes. That's a lot of syllables of mashed potatoes. That was running long, okay? Did someone say turducken? Did I hear that? Or am I imagining something? How many of you all are turkey people for sure, turkey Thanksgiving? Do I have any ham people for Thanksgiving? Oh, yeah, I'm in your club, okay? Come to my house. I like both, actually. Let's put them both together on the same day. That's good. Pumpkin pie, anybody? Oh, yes. Complemented with chocolate pie, maybe, something like that. Chocolate peanut butter. There's a lot of good food on Thanksgiving, right? Is it a meal? Is it an endurance event? I don't know, but it's a good time is what it is. And we get to, for one meal, not feel bad that we can consume 4,000 calories, okay? You just get to eat as much as you want and not feel bad about it, and gluttony is patriotic. For one day, it's a good time. I love feasting on that day, truly. It's something we should do. If we were to take the opposite of Thanksgiving and try to find the opposite of a day of feasting, what would that be? Now, if you peeked at your bulletin this morning, you already have a clue. You're probably like, I know what you're going to talk about, Pastor. The opposite of that would be fasting. Instead of a day that involves survival of the fullest, if we had a day where it wasn't about what we enjoy or what we take in, but what we limit ourselves to and say no to ourselves about, that would be fasting. And before we put the turkey on the table 10 days from now, it may be a decent idea for us to talk about a rhythm, a spiritual practice and discipline that would be healthy for us to possess our lives. Oftentimes it does not. This is a very unpopular practice of Jesus. It is one that's not easy. It's not trendy. But there's power in it. When you talk about the practice of fasting, it might be the very thing that God wants to use to remind both your body and your soul of who really is in charge. And I want us to examine fasting today. Donald Whitney, in his book, Spiritual Disciplines for the Christian Life, has a chapter on fasting, and he calls it a dusty, rusty discipline that is, quote, the most feared and misunderstood of all the spiritual disciplines. Now, that's quite a combo. From his vantage point, fasting is both the most feared discipline, like more than tithing or giving your money away, more than serving and showing up and committing yourself to something, the most feared and the most misunderstood. He said that most Christians worry that if they try fasting, it will be a generally negative experience at best, or they'll suffer dreadfully at worst. And I do know a lot of Christians that have put fasting in the same bucket as basically walking on hot coals with your bare feet or handling poisonous snakes or something like that. And it's not meant to belong in a bucket like that. Fasting is something that should be experienced and I dare say even enjoyed by Christians. Let's start with a working definition of what fasting is or is not, and then we'll begin to examine what Jesus did and said about this. Fasting, if you use Whitney's definition, is a believer's voluntary abstinence from food for spiritual purposes. Now, that's an important note. When we're talking about fasting as a spiritual discipline, we're talking about followers and believers in Jesus doing this not predominantly for physiological benefits, although there are some, but doing it for spiritual purposes, and it is an abstinence from food. While you could kind of say that you can, quote unquote, fast from social media or from television or from coffee, that really is not a fast in the way that it's intended to be understood from a Christian perspective. Fasting is an abstinence from food specifically where you're not eating. There are multiple types of fast. There's an absolute fast, which is no eating or drinking. That is not to be done for long periods of time, but you would find someone like Esther in Esther 4 and 5 called the Jewish people to do a 3-day absolute fast, no food or drink. A normal fast, which is what will be in view today, is where you are not eating, but you can drink water. You could even drink coffee if you wanted to. It'd be nice to have it black because it's then predominantly water. Once you start to mix in all the sweeteners and the sugars and all the stuff, then it starts to change it a bit. But it's just no eating and drinking some water. You can do a partial fast. A partial fast is where you would take a staple of your diet and remove it for a period of time. I'm not going to eat bread this month or something like that. But fasting is something where you are voluntarily saying no to food. That's important to note. We're not talking about saying no to something else. And if you look at fasting in the scriptures, specifically in the life of Jesus, you find first and foremost that Jesus fasted. That's a simple point, but one that we shouldn't ignore. We find in Matthew chapter number 4 that Jesus was led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. This is immediately after his baptism to start public ministry. And what we find is that when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, afterward he was an hungered, which isn't entirely surprising. Verse 3, when the tempter came to him, he said, if thou be the Son of God, command that these stones be made bread. And Jesus answered and said, I am on a gluten-free diet. Can I make them pork chops instead? That's not really what he said. What he said was, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. Now, there are subtle cues in this little bitty snippet of the story of Jesus' fasting in the wilderness that are overtly stated in other places that can tip us off as to how fasting works physically at some level and how fasting is supposed to work spiritually. This says that Jesus fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, and after the 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. And you may be tempted to think, if you've never fasted for 40 days or 40 nights, which I would be the first to raise my hand and say I have not either. I know a handful of people in our church who have. I know some people in our church who've done 30 days. I know some people who fast very regularly in our church for 18 hours or for 36 hours or for whatever it may be. I've done 10 water-only fast, and I was hungry the whole time, to tell you the truth. But they say that around day 10, 14, somewhere in there, your hunger will go away and you'll no longer really need food. And on day 30 or on day 35, it is highly likely that Jesus was not feeling hungry, but he was hungry on day 40. Why? Well, because this is how our body works. This is what happens physically when you fast. And to be certain, this is a really simplified version of it. I'm not a doctor. You can read a lot more on this. But if you had to put it really, really simply, this is what happens. Day 1, you start to hit a reset button on your body. Your blood sugar begins to even out. Inflammation begins to dip a bit. Cellular cleanup begins inside of your body. On days 2 through 3, a deeper cleanup begins, and the body begins to now run on stored fat. Your insulin drops lower, and the cells crank up this repair process. You will experience in days 1, 2, 3, very possibly headaches, definitely a craving for food. These are also normal things, but your body is doing something really healthy. Days 4 through 7, what they call cellular spring cleaning begins, meaning the body begins to recycle old damaged cells and actually expel them from your system. Many people experience gut irritation, calming down if they struggle with that. Inflammation continues to fall. And what is happening is, I heard a doctor describe it this way. He said, if you were stuck in a cabin in the snow in the mountains, you were snowed in, and you burned through all your firewood, and now you had to go to reserves, you would take inventory and you would begin to burn the least helpful items first. You would look for old newspapers, old books, that end table that's in the attic that you haven't used in 10 years. You would not start with your kitchen table. And he said, your body's going to do the same thing. It's going to take inventory and begin to get rid of the old or damaged cells first, and then it will gradually get to things that are more important as it can. After the first week of a fast, you'll get to what is called restored systems. This is a moment where a lot of your loss of strength, maybe even feeling faint, feeling hungry, starts to subside. Many people will say they feel as good as they've ever felt in their life once they've fasted for a week to 2 weeks, somewhere in that range, and they will have increased strength. They'll have little to no concern for food at this point. They will have very stabilized mood and very consistent energy, and the whole immune system begins to be refreshed, and blood pressure and cholesterol and blood sugar all move in healthier directions, and our body begins to be in fat burning mode as it's normal rather than a last resort. And all of a sudden, sharper thinking begins to happen, and many people will even say they have some sort of spiritual high where they are just locked in life. But around day 40, the body begins to give hunger pangs, meaning that the process of elimination has been completed and the body is now starting to draw on good, sound, living tissue, which is not a good thing. That's not what you want. And when Jesus fasted 40 days and 40 nights, and then afterward was hungered, that is to say, he went through the normal rhythms of what happens in a human body when you are fasting, that around day 40, that is going to be a complete fast, and it likely would not be recommendable to go further. Obviously, there's lots of variables here depending on how many fat stores you have and how old you are and all kinds of things, but that's generally how it's going to work. And when it says that he was hungered afterwards, it means that he went through a full fast for 40 days. But he also says that man's not going to live by bread alone, meaning we do live by bread. You can't fast forever. You will starve to death. That's how it works physiologically. We do live by bread. We need sustenance, but we also live by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God, meaning you need physical sustenance and nutrition, and you also need spiritual sustenance and nutrition. And we have to pay mind to both of those. If you are only interested in physical sustenance and nutrition and you ignore the spiritual, you're doing a disservice to yourself. And we do live by the words that come from the mouth of God. We live on God's word. So there's something that happens physically when you fast, but there's also something that happens spiritually. And for a Christian, when we're fasting, we're not trying to do a crash diet. We're not trying to just lose weight. There's a spiritual purpose to this. And if you survey the scriptures, you'll find that there's lots of purposes to fasting. You would find, for example, that fasting somehow, some way amplifies our prayers. That it puts a megaphone to the mouth of our prayers, and it allows them to somehow scream louder in the throne room of heaven. This is why Esther calls her people to fast for 3 days, because they were in dire straits and they were in mortal danger in Esther 4 and 5. And they said, this is cause enough where we need to sharpen the edge of our intercessions. We need to be sure that our prayers are as heard as humanly possible, so let's fast while we pray. And God did come and answer their prayers in that moment. So this is a privilege, this is a powerful weapon in many ways to amplify our prayers. You also find that fasting has this way of weaning us off the pleasure principle. By and large, we live in a hedonistic, instant gratification, do what feels good in the moment sort of culture. That was once reserved for toddlers, and now that is commonplace for adults to just do what feels right and good. The problem with that is there are many things that feel good in the moment but are long-term damaging. The opposite of that is true, that there are many things that do not feel good in the moment, but they're long-term very profitable for you. That would be fasting. And fasting has this way of teaching us that we don't have to live by just what our bodily impulses tell us to do and constantly feeding ourselves literally whenever we're told to by our bodies, but weaning ourselves off of the pleasure principle. And if you live strictly by the pleasure principle, you'll never mature into the man or woman that God has you to be. Never. There will be a stunting of your spiritual maturation that takes place, and it's a healthy thing for us to experience this. You also find that fasting has a way of increasing our sensitivity to God's voice and his will for our lives. That there are times in Esther where it's like, God, here's what we need, and you're wanting God to listen to you. But there's also times like Acts 13, where the early church says, God, we need to hear from you. What do you want from us? We're going to pray, and we're going to fast, and we're going to lean in, and we're going to listen. And God speaks to them and tells them to take these 2 guys named Paul and Barnabas and to make them missionaries. And he begins to unveil his will to them through the process of fasting. Lastly, you will find that fasting reveals and reorders our desires. The stone cold reality for many people is that food and our body and our desires for food have way more power over us than we would like to admit. And when you fast, you begin to see how true it is that the body is our master sometimes. Of course, we know that this is condemned in Scripture. Paul writes multiple times about those who, quote, their God is their belly, meaning they serve their fleshly appetites and they're ruled by them. And it's important for us to take inventory of this at times and to have this revealed to us. And fasting is a way for us to break free at some level from the unhealthy relationship that many of us have to our body and its desires. Many of us have a strained relationship at best when it comes to our physical urges. Whether that be food, whether that be sexual temptations, whether that be substance abuse and alcohol and drugs, or a whole variety of things. And we are oftentimes very frustrated with this relationship that we have with our body and how much it controls us. And I'm really going to quit smoking this time, even though it's the 50th time. And we have this that happens inside of us. And we try to reconcile that with the scriptures that tell us to present our bodies as a living sacrifice to God. And fasting is a way to help us do this. It is a way to take our human cravings that tend to overflow their banks and to put them back in their proper channels and to begin to have some sort of exercise or practice by which we can grow in this. So the point is this: there's a lot of reasons, both physical and spiritual, why someone might fast, but I'm trying to paint the picture that Jesus fasted, and there's tremendous benefit to people when we fast as Christians. Not only did Jesus fast, Jesus taught fasting. In Matthew chapter number 6, this is where we left off last week, where Jesus was teaching on prayer. And he ends this section on prayer with, "Thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever, amen." And then he says in the next breath, "Moreover," so let's add to it, "when you fast," meaning there's some sort of assumption that we will do this. If you look at the scriptures, you find many people did. You would find that Moses fasted for 40 days. Elijah, the text is a little bit unclear, but it looks as though Elijah fasted for 40 days. You would find that there was a day of atonement for the Jewish people, which the whole nation together fasted for a day. Ezra was going to lead some exiles back to Jerusalem, and before he did that, he proclaimed a day for fasting and safety. Nehemiah continued in fasting and prayer before the God of heaven, Nehemiah 1. Daniel devoted himself to pleading with God by prayer and fasting, Daniel chapter number 9. Joel instructed Israel to pray and fast. Esther called for a 3-day fast. Jesus fasted for 40 days. Jesus told his disciples to fast. The church at Antioch fasted. In 1 Corinthians 7, we're told that husbands and wives, if they are fasting physically from food, that they also might want to consider fasting sexually and to have a time where you're saying no to both of those desires. Like, you find fasting all through the scriptures. It's not something that's novel. Fasting is mentioned more often than baptism. So fasting's in the Bible, and Jesus taught his disciples to fast. He said, when you fast, he assumes we'll do it, but then, and this is almost comical, he assumes we'll do it wrong. He says, when you fast, here's how not to do it. Don't do it like the hypocrites. They have a sad countenance, and they disfigure their faces, that they may appear unto men to fast. They want everyone to know how hard it is. It's so difficult, but they have willpower, and they're doing it. They have their reward. That's what he says. They have their reward. But you, when you fast, anoint your head, wash your face, do your hair, okay? Don't look like a train wreck. Wash your face. Don't look all disheveled and go around mopey all the time, letting everybody know that you're fasting, that thou appear not unto men to fast. What is he saying? Is he saying you could never let anyone know that you fasted? Well, no, because we know the church at Antioch fasted together in a group. We know that Esther and her people fasted together in a group. Like, there were corporate fasts all the time, and they knew that they were doing it. What is he saying? He's talking about motives. When you're fasting, or when you're praying, or when you're giving, when you're doing any of it, don't be a show-off. You're not trying to manipulate God. You're not trying to lose weight. You're not trying to get attention to appear as though you're spiritual varsity. That's not the goal of a fast. Wash your face and put some product in your hair, and don't go around publicizing this to everyone. Have the right motives. But then listen to this. He is explicit that there are real benefits to this. And here's how he says it. Thy Father which is in secret, thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly. Now, what does reward thee openly mean? Well, it can mean a lot of things. But we can definitely, at the very least, it means there is some sort of spiritual benefit when you're fasting with the right motives. Then in some way, shape, or form, if you want to push the ball over the spiritual goal line, if you will include fasting with praying, it will do things that prayer alone cannot do. There is spiritual reward and there is benefit from doing this. That's what he's saying. So his teaching is simple. Do it with the right motives, and understand that there's spiritual reward when you do it. We need to take note of that. Okay, I need to do this for the right motives because there's real spiritual reward. I'm in. Now, couple this with the reality, though, that Jesus also taught not to fast in celebration. You say he did? I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't give you the full picture. And sometimes I will hear a sermon, or I'll read a book, or I'll read a chapter of a book or an article or something on fasting. And by the way, if you're looking for a book on fasting, God's Chosen Fast by Arthur Wallace is a seminal work. It's simple, it's short. You can even get it for free. Just read it, on your web browser or something like that. If you Google it, it's probably 50 years old, but it is a classic on Christian fasting, and I would recommend it to you wholeheartedly. But sometimes those books or sermons will not bring the conversation full circle, and they'll leave it as though there's spiritual benefit to fasting, so we should pray and fast all the time. That's all we should do. We should live like monks. We should constantly be somber. We should constantly be in a fasting mode. And they'll leave out celebration. And celebration and fasting are meant to correspond with each other in beautiful, beautiful ways. And listen to Matthew 9. The disciples of John the Baptist come to Jesus, and here's what they say: "Why do we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples don't? We're fasting often, but your disciples, they fast not." Jesus, what's up with this? You teach fasting, you fast yourself, but you're not making these guys do the spiritual discipline. And this would kind of make sense of when the disciples come to Jesus and they're like, "Jesus, we couldn't cast this demon out of this guy." And Jesus is like, "Well, that comes by prayer and fasting," meaning you haven't been praying and fasting. So they kind of have an axe to grind with Jesus, and they're saying, you need to get these guys on the same page. You need to get them fasting more often. And here's Jesus' response to them. "Can the children of the bride chamber mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? The days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken from them, and then they shall fast." Now, that's metaphorical language, so let me break it down for you. What he's saying is, you don't go to a wedding reception and fast. If you went to a wedding and you got to the reception and the bride and groom said, "We're not cutting cake and we're not eating any food, you know what, we're just going to have a sweet hour of prayer and we're all going to fast together," you would say, "That's weird." And I would say, "That's weird." That wouldn't be spiritual. It would be dumb. A wedding is a time for celebration. It is a time where you eat. It is a time where you dance. It is a time where you laugh. It is a time where you have fun. It's a time for celebration. And he's saying, when it's a wedding, you're not fasting, you're celebrating. And what he's saying is, I am come, and I am here with good tidings of great joy. This is a joyous occasion. The reality that God would come in the flesh, that your Messiah would be with you. This is a moment and a season for celebration. There's coming a day when they're going to fast. And he makes that very clear. I'm going to leave, and then they're going to fast, and then it's going to be time. But right now it's not time. Right now is a time for celebration. You get that? What this means for us is that Jesus has left. It is a time for fasting, but we would reverse engineer this. We would say we're looking forward to the day where he's coming back, and that will no longer be the day for fasting. That will be the day of the marriage supper of the Lamb. That will be a time of celebration where he has come back, where he has made everything right, where he's putting it all back in order. But right now is a time for fasting. But the point is this: Jesus had this balance between feasting and fasting, and that balance was something that actually possessed the early church very well. In Jewish tradition, there was a habit that they would fast twice a week, Monday and Thursday. Those were the days that they would fast, and they would do their fast from sun up to sundown. A day of fasting was not literally 24 hours for them. A day of fasting was when you wake up in the morning till the sun goes down in the evening. Some people would go longer and they would go 24 hours. Some people, maybe a nursing mother or someone, would go a little shorter. It wasn't entirely legalistic, but there was this expectation that people would fast. And the early church continued this tradition of fasting twice a week. If you read early church documents like the Didache, you will find that there was this regiment where they fasted twice a week. They switched the days up a little bit. The early church days were Wednesday and Friday. Those were days for fasting. Saturday and Sunday were days for feasting. Saturday was Sabbath, and Sunday was the Lord's Day, where we celebrate his resurrection. We don't fast on those days. We celebrate family and rest and relaxation on Saturday, and we celebrate the Lord on Sunday. So they had 2 days for feasting and 2 days for fasting. That was their rhythm in the early church. And they had this rhythm, and it expressed itself in a multitude of ways. The early church had this habit of fasting for a full 24 hours before Easter Sunday. And they would fast for a day, and then they would celebrate hard for the day. This eventually gave way to Lent. Lent is not something that's commanded in the Bible, but is something that has long roots, and basically was a 40-day fast, similar to Ramadan in the Muslim tradition, where you would not eat from when you woke up in the morning till sundown. And when the sun went down, then you could eat a simple meal in the evening, and then you would do it all over again. It's 40 days of intermittent fasting, basically. Now, Lent has evolved into something a bit more cancerous now, where it's in Lent season, even in the early church, you didn't drink alcohol, you didn't eat any meat. Now that's evolved into well, is fish really meat? I guess it's not meat. Wink, let's have a fish fry and gorge ourselves. Like, that's not what it was intended to be. It was intended to be let's have 40 days of intermittent fasting, followed by the last day being a full day fast, and that leads us up to Easter. So then when you get to Easter, and like Easter lunch and having a big lunch and lots of food, like that's a tradition that's millennia old. When you get to that day, it's on the heels of all this fasting. Now think about this for a minute. Think about how good Thanksgiving is, or how good Easter dinner is. Now think about how good it would be if before that you had 1 day of fasting, and before that, you had 40 days of intermittent fasting. Can I tell you, you would look forward to Thanksgiving or Easter or whatever it was with great anticipation. I mean, however much you anticipate it now, it would be multiplied exponentially. But that was their rhythm. It was complementing each other. It was like, let's fast some, let's feast some. Meaning, we can poke fun at Thanksgiving and say, this is the one day where we can all become diabetic or eat 4,000 calories or sweat gravy or have, elastic waistbands or whatever it may be. But there is something to feasting. Thanksgiving is beautiful. If you're like, I'm going to be extra spiritual and fast on Thanksgiving, don't do it, okay? That is a day that is designed for us to celebrate God's goodness and feast. But you have to pair that at times with fasting, which teaches us to depend on God's goodness. There's a complementary relationship. One says, God, thank you for the blessings. We're going to enjoy them right now. The other says, God, you're blessing enough. If I don't eat today, I'm fine. I have you. Both are beautiful responses to what God has done in our lives and what we want him to do in our hearts. And this is exactly why Jesus talked about both. That these two are meant to come together. Now, here is the point of today's sermon. I will have done my job well today, if I do say so myself. I'm going to self-evaluate, okay? If I can convince the majority of you to fast with me for 1 day this week. That's the whole point of my sermon, is to try to get you to try this on for size if you've never done this. Most Christians, I've done enough teaching on the practices of Jesus and workshops and things. The majority of Christians have never done this. For a spiritual purpose, okay? I'm not talking about the colonoscopy that your doctor ordered for you, okay? I'm talking about for spiritual purposes. To take a day from sun up to when the sun goes down. Now, we're cheating a little bit. The sun goes down about 1 p.m. nowadays, okay? We are real close to the winter solstice. Thank the Lord I'm not preaching this during the summer, because it would be a much longer day. from when you get up to sundown, which is before normal dinner time nowadays, to not eat anything for a day this week, I think it would be a beautiful thing even if it was just this section over here and 50 or 70 of you, if we all fasted together. But I think about what if half of the room all did this together? Or think about what if the whole room did this together? That would be a beautiful, beautiful thing in my estimation. For us to collectively shoot a flare to heaven and say, God, we're serious about you. We're serious that you mean more to us than me even eating my lunch today. And I can go without because you've blessed me. And I can take a little bit of extra time and I can lean into you. I think it would be a beautiful thing in general. Honestly, I think it would be a beautiful thing for this season of ministry that we're in as a church. We are in a beautiful season. We are in an exciting season. It's wonderful to see full rooms and parking lots, stuff all over the place. It is unbelievable to see this building going up and every week to see the progress. It's so exciting. But if we think for 1 second that it's like, well, there's money in the bank and we already did the capital campaign and there's enough people here and someone got baptized last week and someone's going to get baptized today and it'll probably happen again next week and we can just rest on our laurels and everything's fine and put it in autopilot. That's the craziest thing we could ever think. This is not a season for us to say, well, it's all good, it's all happening, so good to go. We can just rest. No. It is a season to press in and to say, God, we don't assume for 1 minute that any of these blessings will continue. You don't owe us anything. You owe us nothing. And God, we need you. We don't need you less now that there's more money or more facility or more people. We need you more. We need more of your power, more of your wisdom, more of your spirit. And I would love for us to collectively not only fast together for a period of time this week, but to also put just a small handful of prayer requests on that day for our church collectively. And if you want to pray for a personal need you have in your life or your family, knock yourself out. But I would love for us to put on a day where we're fasting together this week, prayers for number one, fruit. Like literally that we would accomplish what God has called us to accomplish as a church, that people would come to a saving knowledge of Jesus, that their souls would be saved for eternity, that he would give us fruit, and fruit that remains, that people would be discipled and that they'd grow in their faith and that they would actually learn and become more like Jesus. So pray for fruit, pray for wisdom. I really believe that there's twice as many decisions to make now than there used to be 7 or 8 years ago. On a daily basis, it seems like the volume of what is happening and the decisions that have to be made in so many different ways is enormous, and wisdom would be a huge prayer request for me and for our leaders, for our pastors, for our deacons. Pray for wisdom. And also pray for unity. Not because we're disunified. Honestly, I think we're anything but. I love our unity, but I don't want to assume that will continue and take that for granted. I want to continue to pray for God, keep us unified, and may our unity be a testimony to people who come and feel like the church family and to a world around us to see, man, you can put this many people together and they can all be on the same page and unified, all pursuing Jesus together. Not that they're cookie cutter, not that they agree on every item, but that they're unified in Jesus. Those would be my big 3 requests: for fruit, for wisdom, and for unity. And I invite you to join with me in this. And here's what I think would be helpful for you to know as we go into it. Very practical, very bottom shelf. But number one would be choose a day. My day is going to be Wednesday, okay? I invite as many of you as humanly possible to join me on Wednesday, but I understand you may already have lunch with grandma scheduled for Wednesday, or you may have the world's busiest day on Wednesday and Friday is way easier for you. That's fine. That's fine. But if you have to pick a day and they're all the same to you, pick Wednesday with me and let's do this together from sunup to sundown. If that feels easy to you, I fast all the time till sundown. That's child's play. All right, extend it. Go for 24 hours, go for 48 hours, go for longer. If that feels threatening to you and I don't know if I can get that done, okay, then skip breakfast. We don't have to be legalistic about it, but an effort to say we're going to abstain and give up some food to the point where it's uncomfortable for a little bit so that we can pursue God would be a beautiful thing. Secondly, prepare your body. I need to put that mic back on my ear. I just whacked it off. Drink plenty of water like the day before, the day of. That'll be helpful. For those of you that can't go that long without your coffee, that's fine. I don't think God will judge you for it. We fast from food. It's not necessarily from coffee. Preferably black, but stay hydrated is the point. Be mindful of things like if you are breastfeeding or if you have diabetes, like use common sense in those scenarios and adjust accordingly as you need to. But then prepare your heart. And this is maybe the most important one. That you want to look at your day that you're going to fast and you want to plan ahead for that. And you want to say, okay, I'm going to slow my pace that day. The goal is not to fill your day so full that you got to dinner and you didn't even think to eat because you were so busy. The goal is to slow down and to say, I'm going to take what I would normally do in my morning rhythm with breakfast or on my lunch hour, and I'm going to take that time that I would drive to buy some food or I would prepare some food or I would clean up from the meal, whatever it is, and I'm going to dedicate that time now, not to more work, but I'm going to dedicate it to the Lord. And I'm going to spend a little extra time reading the scriptures or praying or just alone with God and letting him speak to me or journaling the things that I'm thankful for. And I'm going to spend some extra time with the Lord. And when I feel hungry or I get a headache because it's been 12 hours since I've had caffeine, when I feel that discomfort, I'm going to use that as a prompt to talk to God. I'm going to use it as I'm hungry, I should eat. No, I'm not eating today. Well, I'm going to take some time and I'm going to pray. God, I commit my body to you. I commit my heart to you. I want you to work in these requests. And I'm going to take a minute. I'm going to say a prayer. If someone at work offers you a little treat and you forget and you accidentally eat it, don't beat yourself up too much. Keep moving, but do your best to prepare your body and your heart and have that day. During the fast, I would say it's really important to not judge your experience. You'll do yourself a disservice if you're new to fasting and you load too many expectations onto it. I've met a lot of people who do this and they think, well, this is unusual, and I mean, this is pretty impressive. I'm going to not eat for a day. I better have some sort of spiritual feeling. I'm sure I'm going to see an angel by the end of this day. God is going to reward me. This is going to be amazing. I will feel fantastic. Wrong. You'll probably have a headache and feel hangry and not enjoy it that much, okay? But it'll actually get better over time. The more that you do it and the more it's in a rhythm, it'll become much easier, I promise you. But you have to walk before you run and set your expectations properly. Don't assume that it's going to be some just unbelievable, otherworldly spiritual experience. But start to pay attention to what surfaces in your heart. Start to pay attention to how demanding your body can be and what a master it can be over your life. And take some time to just reflect, maybe take some short walks, to breathe deeply and just talk to God and pray to him. Breaking the fast, I would recommend breaking it with a simple meal and gratitude. You'll probably be more grateful for your food after you fast for a period of time. But break that not with gorging yourself. The goal isn't to have a Thanksgiving dinner early this week. The goal is in the fast, but maybe that's, chicken noodle soup or something simple, and ease out of it slowly, especially the longer you go on a fast. And just thank God for the strength that he gave you to get through it. Thank God for the food that he provides for you regularly, and take some time and just talk to him as you break it. And remember this, it's not about perfection, it's more about practice. If you're I'm going to do it, I'm in. I'm going to fast for a day this week from when I wake up till the sun goes down. I'm going to fast. And then you get to lunch, and then you get an hour beyond lunch, and you just can't hang. And you break your fast earlier than you wanted to. It's okay. You can try it again. It's like anything. You have to practice it consistently. You're not going to be a master the first time that you try it. It's going to take some time. But it's more about the process. I'm more interested in you trying this on for size and you dipping your toes in these waters and experiencing it in some small way than I am you having a 40-day fast, on day one. If you want to do a fast that's longer than 3 days, I would definitely recommend you read some of the suggested resources on the bottom of your outline because that can be very helpful. There's a whole can of wisdom that I would love to give you on that, but I'll leave that off for now. So here's the point. Before we get to next Thursday and we feast and we fill our plates, let's consider taking a day to fast and to fill our hearts and our souls. Before we take a day to say, God, thank you for all the blessings, let's enjoy them. Let's take a day to say, God, you're blessing enough. If all I have is you, I'll be okay. And if I read the Bible right, God will take notice of that. If I'm reading this right, God's going to look down and say, I think they're serious. I think they mean business. I think they actually want me to show up. And they actually want to see gospel ministry happen. And they actually want to be unified. And they really do want wisdom. He'll take notice of that. It's like us shooting a flare up to heaven. Not to impress God, but to invite him in. Not to somehow earn his grace, but just to experience his grace and to show him that we mean business. And while feasting celebrates the gifts, fasting celebrates the giver. And I'm hopeful that the majority of us this week can take some time and do exactly that. Give up some food and say, God, you're enough, and celebrate the giver together.
It's my prayer that today's message challenged and encouraged you in your walk with Christ. If this sermon was a blessing to you, know that it was made available because of our financial partners. I want to take a moment and invite you to be a part of that tribe. I know not everyone's in a position to give, and if that's you, then just let this broadcast be a blessing, no strings attached. But if God's blessed you with the ability to give, I would love for you to link arms with us and support what God is doing here. As a small way of saying thank you for your generosity, I'd love to send you a copy of my new book, The Prayer Jesus Gave. This is a guided tour through the model prayer, what some would call the Our Father. And if you've ever felt like your prayer life could use an upgrade, I know it will be a help. You can give and receive your copy at harvesttoyou.org/give or by mailing a donation to the address on your screen. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. We'll see you next Sunday.